What's going on, everybody? It's Chris Classic dropping another video, another car vlog. I'm on the way home. I wanted to talk about NXT. Before I go on, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share, talk about it, comment. All comments, especially positive, are welcome. So let's go into it. So a lot of people are upset with the drastic changes about NXT. They're saying that NXT is dead. Vince is killing a brand. But let's talk about it, okay? When it started, it was great. It was awesome. Like, people were really compelled into it when they were in Full Sail University. When I first got the network, I got it obviously for cheaper prices for the pay-per-view. You're only paying what? It was $10 a month. But I've heard about NXT. Like, a lot of people were saying, man, this is a great show. You're missing out. You need to watch it. You need to watch it. That was just the main thing people were saying on the internet. Now, this was saying a lot because at the time, people were saying that Raw and SmackDown, they were just horrible. They were saying it was just poor. The storylines don't make sense. Title changes. All of that. This was back then. So when I watched it, I remember seeing a lot of the guys I've never seen before or I heard on the independent scene. I was like, man, this is a pretty good show. The wrestling was solid. The storytelling was solid. You had larger-than-life characters in a developmental, because that, at the time, was still considered developmental. But then you've seen guys like Neville, Bo Dallas, Big E. Even before that, when it was FCW, but it changed to NXT. So around the time I was watching it, Seth and Roman and Dean, they had already debuted on the main roster. So I didn't watch FCW, but I did watch NXT. I will say that. So to my knowledge, it was a lot of these people. You had Sasha Banks, you had Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Bayley, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, then eventually Asuka and Bamu. Like, you had all of these great characters that were great wrestlers. And it was to the point that people were like, this should be a main show. And what did WWE do? They listened. It was considered the third show. And a lot of people forget it. But if you remember, November 2019, Survivor Series was Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT. And if you look up the results, you remember NXT had a dominant showing that pay-per-view. I think they won like 3 or 4 matches out of the 10, and then the others were like split. Like, they were unstoppable. Now, while we're here in November 2019, let's talk about AEW, because they were already running a few shows before then, because they started in 2019. So this pivotal moment should have been, or was expected to have, NXT be put on the map as a wrestling show. Already under WWE, but it was supposed to be the show that the internet wrestling community said everybody needs to watch it. But what happened? They still lost through the ratings. Now, I will say this. Between when I first got the network and when Survivor Series 2019 happened, it was already an altering product. I will say that. Most of the top guys were already called up to WWE, to Raw, SmackDown, and they were already, or released, or whatever like that. But still, people were still watching the Ember Moons, the Shayna Baszlers. You were still watching the Oscars at the one point. You were still watching this product. You were still watching it. You were still watching Owens. You were still watching this stuff. They just went up to the roster. But I will say this too. They did a great job with some of the people. Like, I understand a lot of people are upset that when NXT call-ups happen, they usually lose or they do not get pushed. I thought Kevin Owens had a great debut. I thought Sami Zayn had a great debut, and unfortunately he hurt himself. I thought even Asuka had a great debut. Now, she lost to Charlotte, but it's Charlotte. I didn't like it, but it's Charlotte. It wasn't just a random person. Now, after that, that's very debatable, because I really hated what they doing to her. But you still had some people who have star power. They still do now. But unfortunate, when you hear the rumors of things changing, roster changing, they want bigger guys, they want to make it more developmental. I can see why people are frustrating, but I don't see nothing wrong with it. Except, people losing their jobs. Of course, that's crap. That's horrible. But, I can understand the format. Like, in 2019, people were still saying that NXT was a superior brand out of everybody. And contrary to popular belief, WWE actually listened to y'all. They listened to us. But the ratings was telling a whole different story. They beat Team Raw and SmackDown, the top brand shows. They beat them in the majority of the matches they had throughout the night. AEW was just starting. So if you fast forward all the way to the end of the Wednesday Night Wars of this year, you already know AEW clearly won. AEW Dynamite clearly won. And when I'm saying it, I'm not knocking AEW Dynamite for doing that, because you want to be the top wrestling company that people are watching on Wednesday or whatever day you're competing. I'm just saying, with WWE and their trajectory, you would think that if this was the show that you guys were saying was way better than Raw and SmackDown, they'd obviously have higher ratings than Raw and SmackDown, and they definitely would have had higher ratings than AEW Dynamite, but they didn't. It was only a few shows during the Wednesday Night War that they were actually on top. But other than that, AEW was spanking NXT. Call-ups or not, champions or not. Like I said, I already noticed the changes of NXT from the network days to now. It was already different. Like, they gave people a little bit more chances who didn't have build-ups, who didn't even have people that were supporting them. And that's kind of good, too. But at the same time, it was just like, man, it was bad. So think about it like this. You guys, we praise Triple H for what he did with NXT and stuff like that. And I'm sure Triple H was fighting for Vince to give NXT an opportunity. And he did. Survivor Series 2019. But then what happened? Now Vince is probably like, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. Because they couldn't even beat AEW Dynamite. This was supposed to be the show that had the best wrestling, right? This was supposed to be the best, that has the best on WWE Network, period. This was supposed to be the show, but I think the internet wrestling community underestimated what ratings are. Just because I like something, that does not mean that that's going to give it high ratings. And people have to understand that. Wrestling is changing with being viral and social media and stuff like that. And just because you have an opinion on something does not mean that you're right or you're accurate. And that's why I always say, when I say a video, that these are my opinions, unless it is a proven fact. And a proven fact is Dynamite spanked NXT. So Vince is like, oh, okay, well, what happened? Okay, well, let me just make it more into a developmental. Let me release some guys. Let's mix it around. I mean, think about it. Charlotte Flair had an NXT title reign after being called up, and they were contributing it to her many title reigns, but they took it away. They're not even considering her NXT women's title win against Rhea Ripley. And Rhea Ripley is a phenomenal wrestler herself. And it was at WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all. And they don't even consider it a championship run. Karrion Kross got called up and had his first defeat against Jeff Hardy. Now, I'm not saying Jeff Hardy didn't deserve the win or whatever like that, because, it's Jeff Hardy. But at the same time, if this is supposed to be a title that's supposed to mean something that's supposed to be like the third brand, you probably wouldn't lose in your debut match. But they had him lose. Oh, foot on the ropes? Okay, we can argue about that, but that's what it is. Do you remember when Kevin Owens debuted and he had a match against John Cena? I forgot which pay-per-view. What happened? He beat John Cena. Come on, man. Come on, man. The writing was already on the wall. And now he's trading victories with Keith Lee, who's on Raw. So, what does that say? They were already showing and proving and pulling for NXT to go back to a more developmental. They were already telling people that this is not a third show. This is a developmental show. They're not gonna. I don't think they're gonna push it like they used to push it. Survivor Series, man. Survivor Series 2019. That was when it was supposed to happen. That was when they were like, oh, okay. Because you know how WWE is. There's no way that AEW is going to beat NXT. That's what a lot of people were thinking about and talking about. But they have. It wasn't even close weekly. The margins were, but come on. Think about that. It's all about business. It's all about ratings to WWE. People already say WWE isn't a wrestling company. It's just a company that has wrestling. Definitely a difference. And they're just showing you how much they care about ratings by releasing so many people. You would think they'd keep some of the veteran people or whatever like that. But one, I don't think it's budget cuts because they're making money. I just think that's just a reason to make them feel like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of understandable. But NXT was a wonderful show. It still has potential. Like, they listen to us. They listen to majority of y'all. Y'all wanted some of these guys from the indies to be signed. And they got signed. But then they started wrestling the same. I don't mean to step on toes. Move your foot out the way. The matches started being repetitive. So many close calls, false finishes, kick out of finishes, multi-man matches, all that. They gave y'all everything that y'all said WWE was scared to do. And when WWE actually listened and gave y'all got tired of it, y'all didn't want to watch it, and y'all were watching AEW over NXT. Let's just call it what it is. Congrats to AEW Dynamite for having something that was over something that they asked for in the first place. So, what do? You know, Adam Cole was on the verge of leaving, and allegedly he's getting paid 10 times more than what he was already getting just to stay on NXT. And I think that was an issue. I thought Cole should have been left. Tommaso should have been left. Gargano, they should have been on Raw, SmackDown, but they didn't because they felt that, they probably had more control and probably had more fun wrestling each other over and over and over. It's one thing, me versus you. Okay, then again, me versus you again. Then me versus you, unsanctioned match. Then me versus you and that man named Lou, triple threat. Then me and you versus that man named Lou versus the brother of Sue. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you start feuding repetitively. And then some of you guys, the guys that you guys wanted them to push, which they did, they wrestle alike. They wrestle the same. They dang near look the same. Their height is the same. And that's why they're trying to get these bigger guys and they're trying to push them. My only thing is, and I hope and pray, that when you have these bigger guys, they aren't getting German suplexed by people half their size. They aren't being thrown around. They aren't being misused. I'm not going to lie. I thought they were going to keep Bronson Reed, though. I will say that. Man, I'm kind of upset about that one. That's my first time seeing him. I never seen him on the independent scene, and I thought the guy was awesome. He was just North American champion, but anyway. But this is what I'm saying. This is just my views and my opinions of it. NXT had the potential. They had the great send-off for us to watch them when the wars were starting. They beat Raw and SmackDown. I'm just going over a summary. They beat Raw and SmackDown. But when it was time for the war, AEW won clearly. They won clearly. Regardless if they had better wrestling, they had better talent, they had better storylines. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the ratings. And that's all Vince cares about. It does not matter how much we like the wrestler or like somebody. If they bring in good ratings, they're going to be good. They're going to push them. Goldberg, all right, he can't wrestle like he used to. Some people say he can't wrestle, but he brings in ratings. The issue is drawing, and can you draw? And to a certain extent, that is WWE's responsibility. That's their responsibility. But at the same time, they're on that if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. That's all I'm saying. NXT is changing. It might be different from what it was. Let's wait and see. Let's not just hurry up and assume that it's going to be trash. This is Chris Classic. Let's take it home.